Hello, everyone. Hopefully, you can hear me and see me. It's just me today. Dan couldn't make it. Nobody could make it. I tried my best, but everyone's busy. And so instead of canceling the show, I figured why not do a solo podcast as that's usually fine enough. Got quite a lot to talk about this week as well. So, hello, Phantom of Earth. Hopefully, I sound all clear. I'm not feeling great today. I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel a little bit woozy. So if I pass out on stream, make sure you clip it, send it everywhere. No, don't do that. We will mention the layoffs, but we won't spend much time on it. There's not really much to say. Other than that, it is unfortunate, but it is the way of the world in tech these days. See, I feel better when I'm not looking at a screen, but the problem is I need to look at the screen to be able to tell you the information. So, Christ, right, this should be fun. Right, I think we're ready to get started. This is the Windows Central podcast for. I'll do that again because I forgot what day it was. This is the Windows Central podcast for May. Is it the 16th? It is the 16th. Okay. This is the Windows Central podcast for May 16th, 2025. Hey everyone, Zac Bowden here. Alone for the Windows Central podcast this week. Unfortunately, Dan couldn't make it, and everybody else on the podcast team was busy. And so it's just going to be me talking to you, the audience, about the biggest news this week in the Microsoft world. So this episode shouldn't be too long. We've got some high level items to discuss, mostly Surface related. Some of it's a little bit Xbox, and then unfortunately, we'll be talking about layoffs at the end. But yeah, it's quite literally mostly the biggest news this week is related to Surface, and it's related to what's next for Surface and what was for Surface. We'll start with, I guess, the big news in regards to Surface this week, and that is the status of the Surface Laptop Studio. Now, this has been a topic of conversation on the podcast many times. Will we be getting a Surface Laptop Studio 3 at some point? You know, I've reported in the past that I've heard that a Laptop Studio 3 was in development. There were plans for a 14 and 16-inch version. It was supposed to sort of launch towards the end of last year / spring of this year. But now a report from The Verge's Tom Warren says that Microsoft is actually halting production on Surface Laptop Studio 2 and that a successor does not appear to be imminent. And that's bad news. That usually means the product line is coming to an end. Now, if we take a look at the Surface Laptop Studio, the Laptop Studio has been on the Laptop Studio 2 specifically. It's been on the market since September 2023. It was announced in September 2023. Let's say it went on sale in October. And so it's been, you know, on sale for over a year and a bunch of months now. And so, you know, this would be about the time a PC would normally stop being produced, right? Especially if there's a successor lined up. But similar to what happened to the Surface Studio 2 Plus last year, where Microsoft entered production, it doesn't appear that a Surface Laptop Studio 3 is imminent. Tom Warren's report says that they're not hearing that a Laptop Studio 3 is imminent. I'm not hearing that a Laptop Studio 3 is imminent. Obviously, I have reported that there was a Laptop Studio 3 in development in the past. That was true. You know, it started development under Panos Panay, but with the Surface portfolio being streamlined in 2023, there was a very real possibility that the Laptop Studio was culled alongside devices like the Surface Duo and Surface Studio and Surface headphones. I was never able to confirm that at the time. I was able to confirm the Duo and Studio is dead, but the Laptop Studio was this enigma. I was never able to confirm if it was dead or alive. But now The Verge is reporting that it does appear, at least signs are pointing towards it being dead. And so The Verge says that they've been asking around in regards to resellers and that they are expecting stock to sort of be depleted and not replaced over the summer this year, which does usually mean that the product's no longer being produced, and so retailers can't order more stock because there's none left to, you know, sell. Um, Curiously, Microsoft refused to comment on this. When the Studio 2 Plus last year was production was ended, Microsoft did. They didn't issue a comment, I don't believe. I can't remember now, but they did tell me that the Studio 2 Plus's production had ended. But it doesn't sound like Microsoft has done that for the Verge's report. So that is interesting. I don't know why they haven't confirmed that. So this is what I'm talking about. Like, you know, I had heard a Laptop Studio 3 was in development, then it sort of went missing, and we've not heard about it since. Does that mean it's outright cancelled? I guess technically no. It could just mean that it's coming later. But if I was a betting man, I would probably say that the laptop studio is dead. I'm just because if I think about the laptop studio as a product, there's no way the laptop studio is more popular than say the Surface Laptop Go, which is also now dead. Microsoft is replacing it with the Surface Laptop 13-inch. The laptop studio is a really unique device, and this sort of circles back round to the conversation we were having a few weeks ago about, you know, the Surface you used to know is now dead. Microsoft is no longer interested in these bombastic new form factors and interesting markets and this, that, and the other. The Laptop Studio 2 is a really unique device. There is no other laptop on the market like it. And as a result of that, I think the device sold poorly. It was very expensive, and even, you know, typically in Surface fashion, it was underpowered for it was using older gen specs than what was on the market at the time. And the Laptop Studio 2 is aged significantly more poorly than other laptops in the Surface range because it was launched just a handful of months before Copilot Plus PCs. The Laptop Studio launched in late 2023, Laptop Studio 2 in 2023, and then Copilot Plus PCs were launched in May 2024. And the Surface Laptop Studio 2 was sold as an AI PC, but that doesn't mean it's a Copilot Plus PC. The Laptop Studio 2 misses out on all of the Copilot Plus stuff, and that's, you know, just over half a year, 8 months, I think, difference, gap between them. And so the Laptop Studio 2 was instantly more older than previous Surface devices because there's never been that feature cutoff before. The Copilot Plus stuff is the first time we've really seen a hardware cutoff in regards to new features in a while. And so the Laptop Studio 2 has aged rather poorly as a result. And not just that, but the Laptop Studio 2, because of its form factor, I think it really limited itself in regards to the market it was going for. A lot of people say the Laptop Studio is Microsoft's MacBook Pro, and that is true. It is the more powerful, creative focused, you know, creative professional focused device. But the Laptop Studio, I think, goes beyond that. The MacBook Pro, for example, is a very nice looking laptop. It's a sleek laptop. It's sleekish, but it's, you know, it's still a nice looking laptop that's relatively portable and easy to carry around. The Laptop Studio 2 is a beefy, heavy, thick laptop. It's more like a portable workstation. And so they were really not in the same class. You know, I think if you take a look at the Apple lineup, Microsoft is trying to mimic it. And so we have the Surface laptop as Microsoft's MacBook Air. We have the Surface Pro as Microsoft's iPad or iPad Pro. And then we have the Laptop Studio as Microsoft's MacBook Pro. I wouldn't be surprised if in the future we see Microsoft scrap the Laptop Studio and replace it with a more powerful Surface laptop, such as a Surface Laptop Pro. You know, that traditional clamshell form factor with a screen that doesn't detach or pull forward or flip around. It's just a laptop, but it's got a thicker base with better cooling and a more beefy CPU and GPU. That, I think, is something we might see in the future. It's something that I know uh, Surface under Panos Panay had always considered. And with the news this week that the Laptop Studio appears to be dead or dying, you know, perhaps now's the time for Microsoft to pivot to do something like that. Because, as I said, the Surface team appears to be no longer interested in um, radical form factors like the Laptop Studio. In a strange way, the Laptop Studio now sort of stands out as an anomaly in the Surface line because it is the laptop line is now, sorry, the Surface line is now traditional laptops and a tablet with a kickstand. You know, that's Microsoft's two-in-one, but it's really just a tablet with a keyboard accessory. It's not an actual dedicated two-in-one. Like the Laptop Studio is. The Laptop Studio is a two-in-one laptop, whereas the Surface Pro is a two-in-one tablet. It's a tablet that can be a laptop, whereas the Laptop Studio is a two-in-one laptop. That is what it is. It can't just be one or the other. It's a two-in-one laptop. And so, oh, do you remember they marketed it as a three-in-one laptop when they first launched the first gen because it had that middle ground mode where you could pull the screen forward and sort of cover the keyboard but keep the trackpad. open. What was that? Was that called presentation mode or something? I can't remember. But they tried to muck it as a 3-in-1 laptop, and it just never was. It's always a 2-in-1. It's tablet, or it's a laptop. And so, there's basically the TLDR. There is the Surface Laptop Studio may be on its final days. If you were interested in buying a laptop studio, I would probably buy one now, because, as you know, if this proves to be the case, there will be no more stock later this year, as the device is no longer being produced. And so, if you want to buy one brand new, or that, which I don't recommend, by the way, you should look for one now. And the reason why I don't recommend that is because the Laptop Studio 2, as mentioned, is very out of date. It has an RTX 30, 50, or 60 in it, I want to say, for a graphics card, which is 2 generations old now. And it has an Intel 13th gen chip, which is at least it has to be at least 2 generations old, 3 generations old. It was already a generation old when the Laptop Studio 2 was new. So, yeah, and again, it's not Copilot Plus, so you're missing out on all those cool Windows AI features that would literally never come to the Laptop Studio 2, which is a crying shame. I know a lot of people say it doesn't make sense for the Laptop Studio 2 to not be Copilot Plus, because it does have an NPU. And it's true, Microsoft did advertise the Laptop Studio 2 as having an NPU, but I believe Intel actually refers to it as a VPU. It's a video processing unit. And that's because it's weak. I think it's 8 tops total, and the cutoff for Copilot Plus is 40 tops. You need a minimum of 40 tops of NPU power for Copilot Plus, and the Laptop Studio 2 is barely achieving 8, I believe. And so it's only really good for some camera effects. And that's why Intel calls it a VPU. And so, that it won't ever get recall and click to do and all of that other fancy stuff. You know, I would, if I was in charge of Surface, I would go back to the Surface Book. I would do that form factor again, thinner and lighter, with a Snapdragon X chip in it. I know people kind of want the dedicated GPU, and yes, Snapdragon X currently doesn't support that. I would wrangle Qualcomm and Nvidia and tell them to support each other. Then I would do a Surface Book with Snapdragon in the tablet and a dedicated GPU in the base, and that would be the laptop for me. That would be an incredible. That Surface Book keyboard and display is just something else. It's just top of their league, and to this day, really haven't been beat. Like the Laptop Studios display was a downgrade over the Surface Book's display for sure. And in regards to the keyboards are similar, but I think the Surface Book's keyboard is above the Laptop Studios ever so slightly. The only thing the Surface Book really needed was a bigger trackpad. The trackpad on the Surface Book 3 is comically small if you look at it compared to modern laptops today. And it also needs to be haptic. So those are the improvements I'd make, and I would make a Book 4. Because the Surface Book, as a brand, that makes sense. I think Surface Book does make sense. If they do a future Surface laptop that's supposed to be more beefy with a dedicated GPU and stuff, they could call it Laptop Pro, but I would prefer if they just called it Surface Book. I don't see why it can't be called that. I do like the Surface Book branding. Actually, before we move on from this topic, let's sort of, I guess, discuss why the Laptop Studio 3 may have been cancelled. Obviously, the obvious one is it didn't sell well, and Microsoft only wants to focus on products that are, profitable. But I think the Surface Laptop Studio 3 was just the victim of unfortunate timing in a lot of ways as well. Obviously, it was refreshed straight away. It was refreshed 2023, and then straight away Microsoft launched Copilot Plus. Now, obviously, when Microsoft announced Surface Laptop Studio 2, they knew they were announcing Copilot Plus next year. That was already in the schedule. It wasn't something that surprised them. They knew Copilot Plus PCs were coming, and they knew the Laptop Studio 2 wouldn't be part of it. And so they were working on Laptop Studio 3, as I've mentioned, but there's a problem. Even if there was a Laptop Studio 3 coming this fall, there is a problem in regards to what would power it, because also, if all new Surface PCs going forward have to be Copilot Plus capable. And that limits Microsoft in regards to what can actually be put in the Surface Laptop Studio, because for it to be a Copilot Plus PC, it needs a CPU with an NPU that is capable of at least 40 tops. But it also needs to support dedicated GPUs. Now, Qualcomm's current offering doesn't allow that, so a Qualcomm chip can't go in the Laptop Studio 3. Okay, what about Intel? Well, Intel does have a Copilot Plus chip. It's the Lunar Lake. It's the Intel Core Ultra Series 2. But in regards to laptops, that chip isn't really designed for workstation grade laptops. It's designed for ultrabooks. And in addition to that, the Lunar Lake chips don't support dedicated GPUs very well. And so if you try to look for a Lunar Lake based Windows laptop, you won't find one with an NVIDIA graphics card or an AMD Radeon graphics card. That's because the chip doesn't really support it. And if it does, I believe OEMs can do some extra work to make it happen. But out of the box, it's not a thing that the chip supports. And so Microsoft can't really go with Lunar Lake either. And so the third option is AMD. AMD's current Copilot Plus chips are very good. They're very powerful, they're very efficient, and to my knowledge, they do support dedicated GPUs. However, AMD, Microsoft has, historically skipped AMD because AMD doesn't offer all the same enterprise and security features and stuff that Intel offers with its chips, and enterprise customers would miss out. And so, Microsoft really, in regards to Laptop Studio 3, is stuck between a rock and a hard place. No matter what they go for, they're going to upset some group of people, whether it be people who wanted the Laptop Studio to run, native x86 code with a dedicated GPU, or if it was people who wanted a device with a really powerful CPU, better than what Lunar Lake has to offer, or if people wanted a Laptop Studio 2 with enterprise grade security offered by Intel. If they went with AMD, they wouldn't be able to get that. And so, yeah, Microsoft, I think that's probably one of the bigger reasons as to why Laptop Studio 3 isn't here yet, because let's be real, Intel fumbled it. they, with regards to Copilot Plus, Intel have fumbled it big time. Their Lunar Lake chip is a great chip on its own as a CPU with an integrated GPU. It's fine. It's good. Actually, it's good. It's got good battery life. Performance is fine. The GPU is actually apparently okay for an integrated graphics card or graphics unit. But when you look at what AMD is doing, it's nothing. It's like, what? AMD's chip is amazing, apparently. If you check out reviews for it, it's very, very good. And obviously, Qualcomm's got the Snapdragon X, which reviewed relatively okay. I think a lot of people were sort of still struggling to get through the compatibility issues. But as a chip running native code, it's brilliant. And so, yeah, Intel have really not done a great job in regards to Copilot Plus so far, or not done as good of a job as they probably needed to make Microsoft happy in regards to a Surface Laptop Studio 3. But anyway, let's move on to our next topic, because this is interesting. As I just mentioned, AMD, a rumor appeared this week from a reliable leaker who appears to be familiar with AMD's plans. They posted on NeoGAF this week just a single sentence, which says a lot, really. But they said Soundwave, which is the code name for AMD's upcoming ARM-based chip. Soundwave is made for the 2026 Surface lineup. That's what they've said. That's really interesting. So obviously, in the last, 2024, 2025, Microsoft has only shipped Surface PCs with a Qualcomm chip. Microsoft is going all in on Windows and ARM for consumers. Obviously, Intel is still offered in laptops for businesses, but in regards to consumer, they are all ARM-based, and so far they've all been Qualcomm-based. Now, it's been in the rumor mill for a while that both AMD and NVIDIA are expected to ship ARM-based Windows PC chips next year, 2026. And so this rumor does line up with that. AMD does appear to be working on a chip that will ship next year that will run in Windows PCs. Now, Kepler L2 is saying that Surface will be part of that lineup. Now, they don't go into much more information about the devices. They don't say anything about what devices will get it, which tells me that they actually don't really know anything about what's going on Microsoft's side. They just know AMD's roadmap, and AMD's roadmap says we have Soundwave coming and it will ship in Surface PCs. And so that leads me on to what Surface PC, because there's no way that they drop Qualcomm for AMD, right? Unless AMD's chip is incredible and better than Qualcomm's. But doing a bit of research, this Soundwave chip doesn't sound like a flagship processor. So based on what we know about Soundwave, Soundwave is rumored to be an APU with a 6-core CPU consisting of 2 performance cores and 4 efficiency cores, along with an integrated GPU with 4 compute units built on the RDNA 3.5 architecture. Now, those specs alone sound relatively low powered. If we take a look at the Snapdragon X Elite, for example, that is a chip with 12 cores. The Snapdragon X Plus is both 8-core and 10-core, and I believe the Snapdragon X is also 8-core. Now, that alone doesn't necessarily mean much. Soundwave could be better than Snapdragon X and Snapdragon X Plus. I think it's unlikely, and I think it's definitely unlikely it will be better than the Snapdragon XLB. It does sound like this Soundwave chip is supposed to be for um, lower end or lower powered devices. And that's sort of backed up by the fact that this chip is reportedly designed for devices with small 5 to 10 watt thermal envelopes. So that's very much devices like handhelds or Surface Go with smaller chassis with no vents and this, that, and the other. And so that leads me to think that, oh, maybe this is a chip for the Surface Go. But then we obviously circle back to the conversation we just had with AMD not supporting all of the enterprise grade stuff that Intel supports. And that being, the Surface Go itself being a device that is famously very popular amongst enterprises. The Surface Go is still around today because enterprises love it. To my knowledge, Microsoft sells more Surface Goes to enterprise than the Surface Pro and the Surface laptop. And that's why it's still produced to this day. You can still buy a Surface Go 4. And that's why, to my knowledge, the Surface Go line isn't dead. They will do a Surface Go 5 at some point. So does it make sense for it to be the Surface Go? Maybe. I think it could actually make more sense to be a Surface Hub because the current Surface Hub is what is it? 13th gen Intel chip. It's not a Copilot Plus chip for sure. And one might argue the Surface Hub doesn't need a Copilot Plus chip. It doesn't even need an Intel chip because all it is a whiteboard and a Teams client these days. And so, maybe a low-powered AMD ARM chip could go in that device, and it would make total sense to do that, I think. But yeah, that is an interesting rumor that has popped up, and it will be interesting to see how Microsoft navigates the market next year in regards to all of these new ARM-based chips entering the market. Microsoft would like to keep all of its partners happy, I imagine, but it can't, to my knowledge, it can't ship, a Surface Pro with everything, with every option, Intel, Qualcomm, AMD, and NVIDIA. And based on the stuff we know about Soundwave, it sounds like Soundwave wouldn't even be worthy for a flagship Surface Pro and Surface laptop. Anyway, of course, that might just be one configuration of Soundwave. There might be more configurations, higher end configurations, which would make more sense. And then obviously that's another conversation entirely. How does Microsoft keep Qualcomm happy if they're going to move on to AMD next year? Who knows? Now, one of the people who covered this, one of the websites said that this will likely be for the Surface Pro and Surface laptop, the next gen Surface Pro and Surface laptop. I don't think so. As far as I'm aware, the next gen Surface Pro and Surface laptop will be powered by Snapdragon X2, and Snapdragon X2 is supposed to debut in September, which would make fall 2025 a good time for the Surface Pro 12 and Surface Laptop 8. Assuming Soundwave does make its way to a Surface Pro and Surface Laptop in 2026, I would assume that's for the generation after next, so the Surface Pro 13 and Surface Laptop 9. And that probably wouldn't happen until the second half of 2026. But again, if Soundwave is what we expect it to be in regards to these leak specs, I think that's unlikely. I just don't think the chip is good enough to be in the flagship Surface devices. I think it makes more sense for a Surface Go or maybe even a Surface Pro 12-inch, assuming that this chip benchmarks well and is comparable to the Snapdragon X Plus that ships in the 12-inch Surface Pro already. So yeah, that's an interesting rumor that may or may not come to fruition. I'm not. Here's what I know is that I don't know anything about this. I've not heard from any sources that an AMD-based Surface is planned for next year. I've heard whispers in regards to some things, but AMD has never cropped up. So I am asking around, and hopefully I'll know more in the coming weeks and months. But from there, we should move on to our third topic, and that is a curious Qualcomm job listing, which seems to suggest that Microsoft is about to debut new, in addition to Surface, Xbox hardware powered by Qualcomm's chips. And so Paul Thurrott's website, thurrott.com, wrote a story this week where they found this job listing and sort of wrote it up as suggesting that, does this confirm that the next Xbox will be powered by a Snapdragon processor? Well, our Jez Corden stepped in. He asked his sources around. He asked around with his sources, and he discovered that this is unlikely. So I'll read what he wrote in his report on WindowsCentral.com. He said, Jez Corden said, our sources confirmed to me this morning that the next Xbox systems, however, are not based on Qualcomm chips. There might be some third-party designed for Xbox ARM-based offerings like the Logitech G Cloud, but the main plan for Microsoft, at least for now, is for the next-gen Xbox systems to have as much compatibility with your current library as possible. The overheads required to emulate games built for Microsoft's AMD-based systems are beyond what the Snapdragon lineup is currently capable of. And I think that sounds right. You know, the emulation layer on Snapdragon is good, but it's not perfect, and there are a lot of games that still do not run on Snapdragon X devices. And so I think if Microsoft really is focused on ensuring maintaining backwards compatibility with the entire Xbox lineup, then moving to ARM does just add a much more complicated layer of engineering to your product that Microsoft has to solve. And so I think it makes sense for Microsoft to stick with. I assume AMD. I would be surprised if they went with anyone else with the next gen Xbox. Now, I don't know if the same can be said for the handheld. Maybe the handheld will be x86, but I could also see it being ARM and it relying on cloud streaming for a lot of that backwards compatibility. But I think in regards to the next gen Xbox console, the actual thing that sits under your TV, yeah, I think it will be x86. I think it will probably be AMD because that form factor doesn't really benefit from ARM, really. Like, it's plugged into the wall 24/7. And sure, don't get me wrong, it would be nice if it sits less power from the wall. But, you can turn the console. I turn my console off when I'm done with it. I don't leave it running. So it's not drawing much of any power from the wall anyway. And yes, I know there's a mode on Xbox Series X where you can have it sort of be in sleep mode and still download updates. I have that off. My console is just off when it's off, and when it's on, it's on. And so I don't think I'd see many benefits going to ARM for the next gen Xbox. Now, it is something they definitely considered. If you remember, if we cast our minds back to the 2022 or 2023 FTC leaks, one of those presentations had a transcript from an internal meeting where a lot of the people on the senior leadership team were talking about the next Xbox. And there was a conversation ongoing between Panos Panay and Phil Spencer and Satya Nadella, where they were discussing if they had settled on the next gen Xbox being ARM or x86 based. And at the time, it sounded like they hadn't decided. They were exploring it, but they hadn't committed. And they were basically saying, we need to commit soon. And so I think ultimately the choice has been, no, we're going to go with x86 because, yeah, it does allow us to bring Xbox forward without having to create another emulation layer for the Xbox to have to process to run your older Xbox games. And so, yeah, I think that makes sense. The job listing is interesting though. So if we let me see if I can find it here. So the job listing reads as follows. It says support the sell-in activities for the next generation of Surface and Xbox products built on Snapdragon solutions, identify and promote strategic business opportunities for Qualcomm in these areas, and work with internal and external stakeholders, including legal, finance, business units, marketing, and field teams to help define the next generation Surface and Xbox portfolios. So this sounds like a marketing role. Let me see if I can confirm that. Give me 1 second. Director of sales. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So it's business development and marketing group. It's marketing. So based on that wording, it could mean two things. It could mean there is an Xbox product coming built on ARM. It does certainly suggest that, but it also could be referring to the upcoming Xbox ecosystem stuff, where Microsoft will allow third-party OEMs to build hardware that is Xbox branded and is able to run at least some Xbox games, but they aren't officially built by Microsoft. And so this could be referring to that, the Xbox ecosystem platform, which will likely run on ARM. Devices as well as x86. But in regards to first party Microsoft hardware, it does seem that the console at the very least will be x86, which, like I said, I think makes perfect sense. Okay, shall we move on to some Windows news? There was a little bit of Windows news this week in regards to insider builds and whatnot. Intelligent text actions in Click to Do for AMD and Intel Power Copilot Plus PCs are now rolling out to those in the dev and beta channels. And so this will allow you to right click on some text and do things like summarize, create a bulleted list, and rewrite text on Copilot Plus PCs powered by Intel and AMD chips, which is kind of nice. Now, Microsoft is also rolling out the AI agent in settings. This was announced a couple of weeks back alongside the new devices. It's now in testing, but only for the base channel. The dev channel misses out, even though you can enable it and it works just fine. I couldn't tell you why Microsoft is like this, but they are. And I've given it a little go, and it's okay. It's not perfect. It doesn't understand everything. What's really nice about it is that you can open the settings app, type into the search box, and in some cases have the AI bring a button to you that basically just lets you enable or configure that setting with one click. But it doesn't work with everything. So if I go, one of the examples is turn on dark mode. It doesn't give me the option just straight from the UI to do that when I search for it. I have to click the search result, which then takes me into the settings page where I can then turn on or off dark mode. But it does work with things like my mouse pointer is too small, which is the actual suggestion they show you in the text box. So you can type, "I can't see my cursor," or "My mouse is too small," and the search results will be the settings, but at the very top it will be an AI result, which is I can change your cursor size from 1 to 5. And then there's a button that says apply, and it will just do that for you without you having to go to the page where that setting is and you having to manually drag the scroll bar to make the size of the mouse bigger. And so that's really cool. And it does work on, at least currently, my Snapdragon X Elite laptop. I believe this will roll out to all architectures at some point. But curiously, even now, a lot of these features do roll out first in preview for Snapdragon, and I don't know why. Actually, I'd say that. I don't even know if this is Snapdragon exclusive right now. The chances are high but I can't confirm that here. But yeah, that's the thing rolling out now. So that's super fun, and you can try that. It's not groundbreaking. I thought it'd be a bigger deal than it actually is. It's actually just a relatively minor addition. But it's nice that it's there. Microsoft is also now rolling out Hey Copilot for Copilot's app on Windows. So remember Hey Cortana? Well, it's back and it's now called Hey Copilot. So you'll be able to shout Hey Copilot at your computer, and it will bring up Copilot's live chat mode where you can chat with it like a human and stuff. So that's kind of cool. So Microsoft says anytime your PC is unlocked and the feature is enabled, you can simply say, "Hey Copilot," or "Hey Copilot, what is the weather like in Palm Springs this weekend?" or whatever question you have, and Copilot voice will respond. Anytime the wake word is detected, you will see the Copilot voice floating UI appear on the bottom of your screen and either hear a small chime or a voice greeting in response from Copilot. And you can end the conversation by tapping the X on the Copilot voice floating call UI, or wait a few seconds without speaking and the call will end automatically. Microsoft does also say Hey Copilot is not enabled by default, so you will need to go into the app and manually enable it if you want to try it out. And yeah, so there you go. That's a thing that if you are been looking forward to, it's now there. And those are rolling out to the dev and beta channels, and I believe the Canary channel as well. Canary also got a build this week, which is the first build it's received in, I want to say 3 weeks, 4 weeks. It's been a while. The reason for that is Microsoft doesn't care about the Canary channel anymore, as we have all discussed. There's nothing in it ever, always, and so if you're in the Canary channel, get out of it. Go move to the dev channel. It's more interesting. The Canary channel is literally for nobody. The only people it's for is for people who are building things like antivirus software, who need to access the kernel and test their app to make sure any kernel changes aren't affecting the capabilities of their app. If you're an end user who just wants new features, the Canary channel isn't for you. On that subject, the latest Canary build, 27858, has some new features, but they're not new if you're in any other channel. So they finally added the emoji button that they're testing in the system tray. That's finally in the Canary channel. That's been in testing in dev and beta for, I want to say, months now. And they've also updated the logic for apps pinned to the desktop so that packaged apps no longer show an accent color backplate. Also a thing that has been in dev and beta for 100 years. And so, yeah, literally nothing new in this build in regards to new features that weren't already in testing in other inside channels. And so, yeah, like I said, if you're in the Canary channel, I don't know what you're doing in there. Like, Microsoft is laughing at you because you still don't even have recall. Like, if you bought a Copilot Plus PC and you enrolled in the Canary channel, you're still not testing recall, which is now rolling out to production. It's done testing. It's out there in the world now, and you still haven't even had a chance to test it. Microsoft values your feedback that little that they didn't even feel like it was necessary to test it with you first. And so, yeah, it's time to leave the Canary Channel. Okay, our last topic for the day is an unfortunate story, which was rumored a few weeks back, but Microsoft has confirmed that it's laying off 3% of its workforce, which is not a small number. Um, and it's unfortunate, as the rumors were correct that it mostly targets um, middle management roles, more or less. This is a report from CNBC. It should affect around 6,000 people. And a Microsoft spokesperson said, "We continue to implement organizational changes necessary to best position the company for success in a dynamic marketplace." Um, yeah, these layoffs are always sting a little because Microsoft as a company is always doing very well. They're always at the top of their game. Their stock price is always great. They make loads of billions of dollars every quarter. Yet for some reason they still feel like they need to tighten their belts and lay off a bunch of people. Um, it is the trend in the tech industry. The tech industry has always been cutthroat when it comes to layoffs every year. Usually around January, February, big tech companies will lay off thousands and thousands of people almost on a yearly cadence. Like people who work at these companies almost expect it. And so, especially since the pandemic, obviously there was that big hiring boom during the pandemic. And then once the pandemic ended, um, yeah, a company started laying off loads of people, and it's just been nonstop ever since. Um, yeah, CNBC says here Microsoft shares ended trading at $449.26 a share, the highest price so far this year. And so, yeah, they're doing great, and yet they still feel the need to lay off people. And so, yeah, it is sad. And if you were one of the people who were affected, that is do apologize for that. Condolences indeed. But a lot of people in this industry are able to get other jobs very easily. They're very qualified people with in a lot of cases, a long list of experience and qualifications and skill sets, especially when it comes to coding, where a lot of the time you can quite easily find another job in the industry. And so that is a silver lining, I guess. Okay, with that is the podcast. There wasn't too much to talk about this week. Like I said, mostly Surface related news, but that's okay. Next week is Build. Build is, well, it depends on what you're interested in. If you're interested in AI and development tools, it's going to be a great week, and we will talk about the biggest Build announcements next week. But if you're a Windows fan, I probably wouldn't hold your breath too much. Build is not a Windows event. I'm sure there will be some Windows news for developers, but I'm not expecting Windows 12. I think that's probably a long shot. But yeah, so tune in next week. We'll be talking all about Build and whatnot. But until then, we shall see you next time. Bye bye. Okay, nice short episode today. Like I said, I'm not feeling great, so I felt like if I kept reading the screen, I was going to pass out. But if you have any questions, I will hang around and answer some questions. So please feel free to put them in the chat if you have any. If there are no questions, then I will head off. Oh dear. Recently, Microsoft 365 apps would continue to be supported on Windows 10 through October 2028. Do you see Windows 10 support extend beyond October 2025 for non-LTSC versions until at least then? No. The reason why Microsoft has extended support for Office and I believe Edge and other stuff on Windows 10 to 2028 is because that is the LTSC. That's when LTSC is expired. And so and the ESU support, the ESU program for enterprises, that's when that expires as well. It's not for consumers. It will benefit consumers if you do choose to remain on Windows 10 and not pay for extended update support, but it's not for them. It's for enterprises, and it's a lot harder for Microsoft to lock down those security updates for only people paying for ESU. And so it's just easier to keep rolling out updates to it for everyone on Windows 10. Don't get me wrong, Microsoft may still may announce that they are extending the deadline for consumers on Windows 10, but I don't think this is a sign of that. I think we'll get to September, and if Microsoft looks at the users numbers and there's still 500 million Windows 10 users, then maybe they'll announce that. But I don't think they're for seeing that just yet. What do I think about the AI chat app for Windows Phone 8.1? I think it's cool that somebody did that, but they must have a lot of spare time because I wouldn't have wasted my time building that. I don't even can you even use Windows Phone? I guess you can because 4G is still a thing. I was gonna say, can you even use a Windows Phone on cellular networks anymore? But you definitely can. Could you see why this might be? While Dolby Vision playback works great, apparently on Surface Pro 11 ARM without the 5G model, it won't work on the 5G version of Surface Pro 11 ARM. Apparently, a message stating Dolby Vision playback isn't authorized comes up. Licensing issue slash mistake or the 5G for the 5G model question mark specifications state Dolby Vision should be supported on all Surface Pro 11 models. Yeah, I'll look into that. I haven't got an answer for you here, but I can definitely reach out to Microsoft and see if they know what's going on there. Matt says he's been using a Lumia 1520 on Windows Phone 8.1 as your main phone. How? Do you not how do you not use do you need apps? I know you can still text and make phone calls with a Windows Phone 8 device, but I do not believe you can do email anymore. At least you can't on Windows 10 Mobile. The mail app just refuses to sign into anything. Uh, 7 Up Studio 2. If I wanted to buy one refurbished, should I choose 16 gigs of RAM or 32 gigs of RAM? So if this was 2 years ago, I would have said 16 gig of RAM is usually fine if you're just using it for web browsing and multitasking and listening to Spotify while writing in Word. But with more and more apps becoming web apps and Electron based, and just Windows is hungrier these days. And so I think 32 gigabytes of RAM if you want to prolong the device. But I have already said I don't recommend the Surface Laptop Studio 2. It's not a Copilot Plus PC. And so it's not going to get any of the cool AI features going forward. Apparently, email does still work on Windows Phone 8.1. That's cool. IMAP on the official client. Oh, good to know. Yeah, I tried to log into email on a Windows 10 mobile device recently, and it just would not let me. So I don't know. Maybe that's no longer a thing on Windows 10 mobile. Yeah, I did see Jess's article about that Lumina AI app. It is interesting. I have Matt's asking if I have any Windows phones. Yes, I have lots of them. They're over there though, in a storage box. Actually, if I can reach it. I do have my Lumia McLaren just here, which is, for those who don't know, the Lumia McLaren is one of the rarer Lumias. It never came out. It was the device that would have shipped with 3D Touch. Um, if you're curious about that, we have reviewed this on Windows Central, so you can go and look that up. But yeah, this is a beautiful device. It's a metal unibody design, and I daily drove this for a bit back in whenever we got it, 2016, 2017. And Windows Phone 8.1 back then was still relatively usable. It still had a store and stuff, which was fun. Um, which Windows Phone 8.1 I don't think does today. Is that the successor to the 1020? That's what it was rumored to be. Yeah, it was going to be a Lumia 1020 successor, ideally 1030, I guess. And it was going to run Windows Phone 8.1, and it had a special start screen which allowed a live task to explode and stuff. Yeah, this is the same device that Mr. Mobile used in his review that had tape all over. I've got rid of all the tape because it's no longer necessary to hide all this information. Because I don't think anyone at Microsoft cares anymore. But yeah, that's one of many devices I have. I have a Kin over there, which, believe it or not, doesn't run Windows Phone. That's the Zune phone. It runs Zune firmware. Will a Surface Duo 2 still work in 2025, meaning apps, etc.? Yes, it will. It doesn't get security updates anymore, but that shouldn't matter unless you're using your phone for work and your enterprise has very strict security patch requirements. Mine doesn't, for example, and so I'm able to. I'm using a Surface Duo One as my work phone, and it's logged into my G apps and stuff, and it still works just fine. All apps work. Like it's Android is good in that way that for the most part, it takes a long time for an app to no longer support an old version of Android. You can probably get away with using a device still running Android 10 or even Android 11, Android 10 these days. And the Surface Duo 2 is on Android 12L. So you will likely be good for a number of years to come if you're willing to risk running with an out of date security patch, which is about the same as running Windows 10 after it ends support. So, you take it, you do run the risk of having an exploit be attacked on your device, I guess. But if you're not downloading anything crazy, you should be okay. I wonder if the Samsung Fold 7 is going to end up being as close to the spec hoped for the Surface Duo 3, deeper Windows integration slash OneNote, etc., etc. So yeah, I believe the Samsung Fold 7 is supposed to be wider and slightly taller than the Fold 6. I don't. I actually do have the dimensions that Surface Duo 3 was supposed to be. I don't know where they are though, so I couldn't tell you. Um, the Duo 3 was supposed to be similar to the Pixel Fold. I want to say. There were 2 pathways they could have gone down. It could have been a sort of squat and wide, or it could have been narrow and tall. And I can't remember which one they were gonna choose. But, yeah, the foldable Duo 3 was probably gonna be similar to the Fold 7, I think. And so, yeah, plus One UI is the best version of Android if you want to sync with Phone Link, of course. And so, yeah, the Fold 7 is looking promising. That will probably be my next phone. Um, yeah. Uh, yeah, Techosaurus Rex says they're still using their Duo 2 as their daily phone. Yeah, if I could find a brand new Duo 2, like unwrapped still, I would probably buy it and daily drive that. I don't really want to buy a used one because they get gross Surface Duos, especially the hinges. If you've been using a Duo 2 for longer than a week, if you look at the hinges, they've got dirt on them. That's guaranteed. And it's really hard to clean them. And so I'd rather just get a brand new one. The Windows official, yeah. So the Windows X official account tweeted about Windows 12. Is this a hint of an announcement? No. What it is Microsoft has hired a new social team, and they're a bunch of Gen Xers, not Gen Xers, Gen Zers, who are very in the now when it comes to memes, and they understand that Windows 12 is a thing that people meme about, and so that's what that is. They're referring to the meme that people are always asking about Windows 12. They're not hinting that Windows 12 is coming. At least not yet. I don't I fully believe a Windows 12 will happen, but I don't think the people running the social Windows account knows that. And I wouldn't expect a Windows 12 until next year at the earliest. So Matt says he's sitting in front of a Surface Pro 4 running Windows 8.1 right now. Sounds like you're a big Windows 8.1 fan, which I agree. Windows 8.1 is great. Windows 8.1 and Windows Phone 8.1 are, I think, the best versions of Windows in regards to touchscreen usage and whatnot. Windows Phone 8.1 I adored. I think Windows Phone 8.1 is better than Windows 10 mobile in almost every way. Um, Windows 8.1 was definitely better than Windows 8. And I think from a polished perspective and just a sort of UI consistency perspective, Windows 8.1 is a better product than Windows 10. Obviously, functionally, that's probably not true. I think most people would prefer Windows 10, but Windows 10 really upset me with its inconsistent UI. Windows 8 also had an inconsistent UI, but there were only 2 inconsistent UIs. It was the desktop and it was the modern UI. Like if you were in the modern UI, you were in there and it was consistent and it was beautiful until you were taken to the desktop and then it sort of messed up a little bit. But the Windows desktop interface isn't so what's the word? It isn't so inconsistent with things like legacy context menus and stuff. It did a good enough job at making everything sort of seem legacy as one consistent interface. Whereas Windows 10 really started messing things up and just everything was just a different context menu and It was the desktop, but everything running on the desktop was inconsistent, and that really just annoyed me. That's why I really like Windows 11, because Windows 11 was a step in the right direction, um, where they tried to make Windows desktop consistent again. Obviously, they've slowed down on that effort now, but Windows 11 is a vast improvement over Windows 10, and yeah, Windows 8 I think was beautiful. Is the latest release of Windows 11 that was RTM supposed to have the side phone bar in the start menu? Updated to this latest update, but I don't see the phone bar. So the phone bar is rolling. So the phone bar is weird because they announced it last year in testing, but then they just re-announced it again alongside the new start menu that's coming later this year. So to my knowledge, if it's if it's n- if it's rolling out, it's rolling out in waves, which is likely why you don't have it. And if it's not rolling out yet, it will be rolling out later this year. Who replaced Panos? Who is the head of hardware? No exciting innovation. So, to my knowledge, the current person in charge of Windows and hardware is Pavan Davuluri, who has been part of Windows and hardware for a long time. He's not new. He was part of he led the charge on the Windows Dev Kit 2023. I actually interviewed him. I've met him in person now as well. He's very nice. He probably doesn't remember that. It was a very quick passing hello, but yeah, he is. I think he's so the thing. He's definitely no Panos Panay in regards to being a visionary. Panos Panay had ideas. He had, um, he wanted to move forward with these unique designs and ideas. Whereas Pavan's much more conservative. I think, is much more of a traditionalist in regards to hardware, and so that's why laptop and pro are getting so much attention now, is because he is a believer of these product lines over all the other more experimental stuff. And also he was tasked with trying to make Surface profitable, and so he had to cull the line. The brand has lost their identity since Panos' departure. It's disappointing. Yeah, again, this is a conversation we've had. I wrote an editorial called "The Surface You Know and Love Is Dead." Surface is in a new era. It's in a stabilization era. It's in a air quote sensible era, where they only want to build hardware that they can guarantee will ship and make money. And more often than not, that usually means not rocking the boat. It means sticking to what they know works. And in this case, that is the Surface Pro and Surface Laptop and derivatives of those form factors. We won't get freaky new form factors like a laptop studio or a Surface Neo or Surface Duo or headphones again. Even though I think the audio head market's huge, I just don't think it's huge for Microsoft. I don't think anyone views Microsoft as an audio peripheral company, which understandable. I don't know why you would, but yeah, we're just not going to see it anymore. Do I have Discord like Jez? I have a Discord account somewhere. I don't use it. I'm not a Discord user. It's just not for me, really. And also, they don't have a Discord app that runs natively on ARM, so why would I? Okay, final call for questions. And if there are no more, I will be heading off because I do feel quite unwell. I need to go lie down. Okay, looks like that's all for questions. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Like I said, we'll be back next week to discuss the build news. But until then, we will see you next time. Bye bye.